Reclaim could have saved the game, and I really do feel that way. Reclaim is an activity we got with the Ashen Iron update, and it was quickly met with a ton of discourse due to the promises Bungie made, as well as a hollow attempt to pull on some nostalgia strings. Now, initially presented as this new activity that we have never seen before, only for it to be a less interesting and less rewarding version of Overthrow, and it was brought back in the Plaguelands in order to pique interest of long-term fans when in reality, they left out the Plague and all we got was lands. This saddens me a whole lot because the negative reaction and clear distaste in the community around these activities means we will never see more Reclaim activities ever added, which is really tragic because it's a great activity type that could have breathed so much life into many areas of the game. I really feel like if Bungie just did not try to hype it up as something we've never seen before and instead just took the three areas from Pale Heart, being the Blooming, the Landing, and the Empaths, and just combined them together in one Reclaim and made it in the portal, it would have been received so much better. Because Reclaim is a good activity type. It was just executed so poorly. If handled correctly, this activity type could have been the way we bring life into old patrol zones, areas that we often just don't explore anymore. I mean, really, imagine Reclaim on Europa or Savathun's Throne World, both old patrol zones that almost never see any play. How often are you actually touching down on Neomuna anymore? They could have given us reclaims for all these old past patrol zones, giving us a reason to appreciate and enjoy these old areas again. You can shout at me that it's reusing content, but is that not also what the Plaguelands was? Just reusing content? And the thing is, they even showed the capacity to do this too, as the current reclaims have areas of the Cosmodrome in it. Why couldn't they do the rest of the Cosmodrome, or other areas of the game instead of the Plaguelands? It feels like Bungie, based on the feedback, will immediately think Reclaim as a concept is bad, and they'll just never iterate on it. And this to me is just not true, because the problem that people really had was how it's communicated, and also how they botched one of the coolest locations in Destiny history, all for some nostalgia. Because let's be real here, the only reason people really cared about the Plaguelands is because of what it entailed. Wrath of the Machine, Siva, the Archon's Forge. People don't respond well to seeing something they love get gutted for the sake of nostalgia, especially when the reasons they loved it so much just aren't there anymore. You could scream lore this and lore that at me all day, but really though, why can't we have self-contained moments added like those? They did it with Crota and they did it with King's Fall. Why does lore need to be the reason why Siva doesn't exist? But we can kill the son of Oryx a year after we've killed Oryx himself. I really feel like everybody wouldn't even mind if they just put regular Fallen in Wrath of the Machine, or regular Fallen in the Archon's Forge. They don't need to recreate the Siva enemies, we just want what the Plaguelands entailed, which was those things. We don't care about Siva necessarily, but it's the idea of Wrath of the Machine not existing because Siva can't exist. Anyways, that was a bit of a tangent, but the point I'm making is that Reclaim to me is just not a bad activity, just everything surrounding it sucks. They brought back the Plaguelands and botched the idea of what could have been. If they had just done Reclaim for other destinations, I feel like the community would have just handled it so much better. And I fear that this obvious no-brainer activity to add other patrol spaces will just never get used because of that community reaction. I'd love to have a reason to explore the old patrol zones through Reclaim, because that to me is just more interesting than waiting 5 minutes for a public event to spawn. They made something cool and overhyped it and just failed miserably on how they used that nostalgia, when they could have been honest with us and given life to old, already existing zones, and also avoided a ton of backlash from the community. I really hope this is a lesson for them on how to communicate new content in the future, and that nostalgia is not a selling point. These areas had real meaning behind them, and players cared about that meaning. The Plaguelands just wasn't some zone. The Plaguelands was Siva, and when we take Siva out of that area, it is now just lands. The Plaguelands, it was an area for Wrath of the Machine. It was an area for Archon's Forge. It wasn't an area for running around and doing public events. And that's essentially what they turned one of the most beloved locations into. And it feels like by having Reclaim be the Plaguelands without the Siva, it's like that gut punch to the game, the final blow, that we can never have self-contained moments anymore. They brought back Vault of Glass and Venus was not in the game. Things like the Whisper mission, that's on IO and that's not in the game either. Something like Vox Obscura, that's on Mars and that's not in the game either. You couldn't have just thrown some red tint on fallen enemies and then called it a day. It's like they could have taken so many routes regarding, and instead they took the one that nobody wanted, which is just to kind of confirm that Wrath of the Machine can never come back. And I feel like that's all the community heard when these activities came out. It's really sad because Reclaim could have been cool. It could have been a great concept for many other areas of the game. And instead of on their first try using an old area that people don't like say Neomuna, they decided to use one of the most beloved locations in Destiny, and they botched it. And it just leaves a sour taste in a lot of players' mouths, and it sucks because, like I said, Reclaim could have been cool. Anyways, this is just my 2 cents on Reclaim, 3 months way too late. At least the law is Frontier kicked ass, and we know that Bungie isn't completely bankrupt in terms of how to make new activity types. But let me know your thoughts on Reclaim and the whole situation surrounding it. I appreciate your time, and thank you so much for watching. Have a nice day.